Thanks, David. I mentioned innovation before, and that's really at the heart of Saab BioPower. Saab has a history of unconventional thinking, from the first cars created by aeronautical engineers after World War II, to turbocharging in cars, active head restraints, heated seats. These are all Saab inventions and reflect the groundbreaking design at the heart of our brand. And behind the Saab brand is an innate Swedish ethos with a passion for form and function design and a strong sense of social and environmental responsibility. Combined, these elements sow the seeds for Saab BioPower, an ethanol-powered version of the Saab 9.5 vehicle, which can run on E85, 85% ethanol fuel or petrol in any combination from the one fuel tank. Before we start talking about the details of BioPower, it's important to consider why ethanol is now the fastest growing alternative fuel in the world. Because it's renewable. And because it's renewable, the emissions from the ethanol don't add to global levels of carbon dioxide. Running BioPower on E85 has the potential to reduce fossil fuel CO2 emissions by up to 80%. If we use this diagram to explain, using fossil fuels represents a broken cycle. If you drive a car on petrol or any fossil fuel, you're adding CO2 to the atmosphere that was previously trapped underground. However, if you power a vehicle using a renewable biomass fuel source, it's a closed circle process. When you drive a car on ethanol produced from biomass, such as sugarcane, which we're surrounded by today, or corn, or wood chips, or grapevine stems as used in France, you're using a renewable source of energy. So the CO2 that's released when you drive is actually absorbed from the atmosphere by the process of photosynthesis when these crops are grown to produce the fuel. In this way, biofuels don't add to atmospheric levels of CO2. In a closed circle process, they recycle the CO2 that already exists in the atmosphere. Now, ethanol is the fastest growing alternative fuel in the world, and we don't have to choose between food or fuel. We can use byproducts and waste to produce ethanol. Brazil is the world's biggest supplier of ethanol. Nearly all of Brazil's domestic road transport needs are met by bioethanol, which is produced locally from sugarcane, without any subsidy, at a lower cost than the world market price of petrol. The other main commercial producer of bioethanol is the United States, which has doubled its output in the last 4 years. In Europe, Spain is currently the largest producer of bioethanol, supplying a relatively small quantities from grain for grain use as an additive to petrol. Interestingly, the most efficient feedstock for the production of bioethanol is not corn or sugar, but biomass in the form of straw, organic waste or wood clippings and forestry residue. The bioethanol produced from cellulose instead of starch and yields are higher as well as less energy intensive. And research is also focusing on removing fossil CO2 completely from the environmental loop. Success in achieving this will depend on the type of biomass as a raw material and the precise production process that's required. Locally, in Australia, ethanol industry is relatively small. The three major producers include Manildra Group, CSR and Rocky Point Distillery. The Manildra Group has current production capacity of 100 million litres of ethanol. Based near Nowra in New South Wales, it produces ethanol from the waste streams of the industrial process of wheat and other grains, and direct fermentation of ethanol from other grains such as sorghum. CSR produces ethanol from sea molasses, a low-value byproduct from sugarcane production. The current production capacity of the CSR facility in Serena, near Mackay, in northern Queensland, is about 55 million litres. And the Rocky Point Distillery just down the road produces 16 million litres from sea molasses and grain. Now you might think that running a car on ethanol requires major new technology. Well, the beauty of modifying a vehicle like the Saab BioPower to run on biofuel is that it doesn't require any new technology. Engineering changes are required to run the Saab on ethanol, but in engineering terms they're relatively small. Currently, Saab adapts its four-cylinder 2 litre and 2.3 litre turbocharged engine. Broadly, the modifications required include the addition of a more durable valves and valve seals and the use of ethanol-compatible materials in the fuel system. This includes a fuel tank, fuel pump, fuel lines and connectors to cope with ethanol, which is a solvent and, like petrol, contains anti-corrosion additives. As I said earlier, BioPower is a flex fuel vehicle. BioPower can officially run on E85, 85% ethanol, 15% petrol fuel, or petrol in any mixture from the one fuel tank. E85 is commonly used in order to promote cold starting performance in low temperatures, which in Australia may not necessarily be a problem, but I guess in New Zealand, in some parts of the country, it would be. E85 is, Saab has actually already developed an engine modification that will allow the use of 100% ethanol in any operating condition. And in a truly Saab approach to problem solving, the engineering of the Trionic management system actually delivers better performance when running on E85. Combined with a higher octane of ethanol, 104 RON, compared to typically 91 or 95 RON for premium, BioPower achieves up to 20% more power and 16% more torque when driven on ethanol. We call that responsible performance. The cars we have for you today are the 2-litre BioPower UK specified vehicles on loan from Saab GB. On E85, these cars achieve 132 kilowatts and 280 newton meters of torque, compared to 110 kilowatts and 240 newton meters on petrol. The cars we'll be launching in Australia and New Zealand are the more powerful 2.3 litre BioPower engines, which generate 154 kilowatts and 310 newton meters on ethanol, compared to 136 kilowatts and 280 newton meters on petrol. What about Australia and New Zealand? Well, what about us? We applaud what's happening in Queensland, which is why we chose to launch our cars here today. We're surrounded by the very sugarcane that could power our vehicles in the near future. We hope by driving BioPower vehicles today, you see that as a community, we can take the first steps towards renewable fuel and make E85 available across the country. We've been in discussions with Manildra Group, CSR and Rocky Point about how we can work together. Manildra have generously supplied the E85 for us today, and we know they have supply capability within their retail petrol network that could quickly adapt to commercial sale to the public. We at Saab believe that ethanol is a key part of the environment's future, and as a result, ethanol is playing a critical role in Saab's future. Last year, Saab showed the world's first fossil fuel-free hybrid, the BioPower hybrid convertible. While this is still a concept car, there's a very real chance that it could start a new chapter for our iconic convertible. And in October in Sydney, we showed the Aero X concept car for the first time in the Southern Hemisphere at the Australian International Motor Show. It's a green machine essentially. It's powered by an ethanol-powered 298 kilowatt twin-turbo V6 engine produced in Port Melbourne, and it sets a new standard for responsibility and performance. So where does that leave us? The environment is a key topic around the world today, from the droughts we're experiencing in Australia to the lack of snow in mountains in Europe. It's becoming a topic for everyday news. We need to play our part. We think it's pretty simple. BioPower gives more power from cleaner energy and leaves a smaller footprint on the environment. This demonstration program is the first step towards being able to sell BioPower in Australia and New Zealand, and we're very serious about doing it this year. We hope the community gets on board. We feel pretty confident that they will. But we really want you to tell us what you think. But collaboration will play a big part in the success. We believe there are some simple ways in which the community, industry and government can act to support clean energy. Excuse me. Now these could include, but this is not an exhaustive list, similar incentives for biofuel vehicles that the government introduced for LPG in Australia, tax concessions for biofuel vehicles which proved so successful in Sweden, and legislative changes to facilitate the sale of E85 to the public, which could even be done in a similar fashion to Spain, where biofuel cars pre-register in order to be able to buy the fuel. So I hope you get a lot out of the Drive programme this afternoon, and we look forward to hearing your feedback. And today, like I said, is as much about hearing from you as about hearing from us.